So, the focus of this blog today is all about Lady Jane Grey, commonly referred to as the 9 Days Queen. However, two aspects of this, I submit, are open to debate. Firstly, by the time Jane inherited the throne, she was married to Guildford Dudley. So should she not be known as Jane Dudley? In fact, she signed her name as this in 1553, signing off a message to Lieutenant of the Tower, John Bridges, in her enforced and by all accounts not always unhappy stay in the Tower of London. Secondly, Jane, it could be argued, was in fact a legitimate Queen of England, only for 13 days before Mary, known later to become Bloody Mary, took the crown by force. Historians may debate these two assertions, but I will briefly explain why I make these two comments. Firstly, Jane's claim to the throne, whether she wanted it or not, was it legitimate? Edward VI, the only surviving son of King Henry VIII and son of Jane Seymour, his third wife, was the King of England from the 28th of January 1547 until his sad and premature death as a 15-year-old on July the 6th, 1553. Despite the fact he was only 9 years old when he inherited the throne, Edward had an absolutely clear vision. He wanted to change England to make it into a truly Protestant land, and made huge strides to achieve this. Henry, Edward's father's act of succession, made it clear that Edward would come first, being his only son, despite the fact that he had two older, but classified by Henry, illegitimate sisters. If Edward had no surviving heirs, then Henry's daughter, albeit illegitimate in his eyes, Mary, then assuming no legitimate heirs, would be followed by Elizabeth. However, Mary was Catholic, an understatement of the year. So when it was clear that Edward was dying, he changed his succession order, which, as king, he had every right and power to do. There is little, if no direct evidence to support the assertion that Edward was coerced or placed under duress to do this by the Lord Protector of the time, John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland. In fact, quite the contrary. Edward's vision of a Protestant England and his many attempts to clip Mary's Catholic wings are clear, documented, and evidenced. 2 words and the removal of 1 letter changed the course of English history. Those 2 words, and her, and the letter S. An already turbulent 16th century fell further into a maelstrom by the stroke of a pen from the dying king, Edward VI. The title for the device of succession is changed by the written, scribbly hand of a 15-year-old boy, but there was nothing childlike in the mind behind the action. If Edward's half-sister and Mary were to be excluded from the succession, then the obvious candidate was the descendant of his aunt, his dead father, Henry VIII's younger sister's Mary's daughter, Frances Brandon.